I am working for Extia since 2 years, something like that. And I am in Toulouse. I worked as a product owner, then a Scrum Master, so it's two roles that you will discover today during this meetup if you don't know what is a Scrum Master or a product owner. So yeah, as I worked already in Scrum, then also in Kanban, that's why I find that it's really useful to know these two methods because, well, really often when we are discussing of Agile at work, people are imagining directly Scrum, but there is a lot of other method. So yeah, this is the reason why we have this meetup today. Okay, so as I said just before, the aim of this meetup is to discuss Scrum versus Kanban. So we will do that in two parts. Part one, Scrum. Part two, Kanban. In Scrum, we will have a short discussion about what is a sprint, what is a Scrum team, discuss the Scrum event and the metrics also. Whereas in Kanban, as there is no such things as event or kind of meeting like that, we will focus more on the Kanban principle. So there is three principles: visualize the flow, manage and improve the flow, and limit the work in the in-progress flow. Let's start with Scrum, and at the end of Scrum, I will answer the questions that you have, if you have any questions. I will try to keep a look in the chat. So if there is something that you don't understand, don't hesitate also to ask me to repeat. It's perfectly normal, so yeah, you can ask. Let's start with Scrum and with the definition of sprint. What is a sprint in Scrum? So a sprint is a period of time of a minimum of 1 week for some team. This is really short, and maximum of 1 month. Usually the teams are having sprints of 2 weeks. This is the best to have regular feedback from the user. But sometimes it's more complicated. It's really dependent on the context of the project. So that's why sometimes it's 1 month. If we have it less than 1 week, it can be a bit shorter because there is a series of events during a sprint. So if you have to make happen all the events in less than 1 week, it could be really difficult. And more than 1 month, it could be also really difficult because it means that you don't get feedback enough. And so maybe you are developing something wrong for the user. So that's why it's minimum 1 week, maximum 1 month, and really often it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So as I said, there is a series of events during a sprint that create regularity and that reduce the need of additional meeting. So that means that except from this event, you don't have other meetings during a sprint. And I will describe these events just after. And you can consider a sprint as as a short project that delivers value. It means that during each sprint, you will create something and bring something to the user. You won't have, like for instance, one sprint with all the documentation, then one other sprint with all the implementation, and a next sprint with all the tests. This is not the case in an agile method, because if you have that, in fact, you are not doing Scrum, you are doing waterfall. So no, in fact, in Scrum, each sprint deliver value, and you will deliver a small pieces of your product every time. And you don't have a period of time between two sprints. Once a sprint is finished, you can directly start a new one. So on each sprint, you have some objective, and you will keep the same objective all along the sprints, and you don't change the quality during the sprints, meaning that if you have decided at the beginning of the sprint to do all the tests in a certain way, you will continue to do it the same way until the end of the sprint. So now you know what is a sprint. And I said you since the beginning of this slide, but who is this you? Who is the team? In fact, the team is what we call Scrum team. It's the developers, the project owner, and the Scrum master. So typically, a team is 10 person or fewer. And for the role, you have so the developer, which is the group of person who is implementing the project. So it's a group of person self-organized and with all the skill needed to deliver the value of the project. They have exactly the same value, the same mindset. Sometimes they can have a mascot, for instance, and they share the same common identity because they are really a team, and that creates um, a strong link between together. Another important thing, and sometimes it's not really understood by the management, this team is really stable. That means that you won't have like 4 developers during one sprint, and then during the next sprint you will have 5 developers, and the sprint after you will have just 3 developers. No, it's really not that. There is no resource management. You have always the same number of people in your team. So this is for the developer part. After that, there is also the product owner and the Scrum Master. Um, so the project owner is the person who will define the priority for the project. So what are the next things to develop, to implement in this project? It is the person who represents the user and who discussed with the user, also with the developer, in order to explain what is the need of the user. And so this person is responsible for the backlog. The backlog is the list of all the items that you have to do to implement your project. So when I say that the product owner is responsible for the backlog, that means that he or she is responsible for the order of the backlog. The most important item are in the top. The project owner is responsible for the transparency of the backlog. Everyone should be able to see what are the next implementation, and also responsible for the comprehension of the backlog, meaning that each items is really clear. It's also the person who implements and develop and communicates the project goal. Why are we doing this project? And this is not a manager. He is not responsible of the developer, for instance. No, he is a member of the Scrum team, exactly at the same level as the developer. It is the same for the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is really not the manager of the team, is at the same level as the product owner, at the same level as the developer. And the Scrum Master is the facilitator. He is the person who knows really well the Agile method and who is able to explain it to the other. So this person coaches the team, help the team to improve, and is able to identify the problem, to identify the risk, eliminates it, etc. So if I have to summarize in a really simple way, we can say that the project owner is the person responsible of all the problem linked to the project, and the Scrum Master is the person who is responsible for the human problem. If you have an emotional depth, for instance, it will be the Scrum Master who will try to help the team to facilitate that. So now that you know what is a sprint and what is a Scrum team, let's see how Scrum is working. So how does it work? You have a project backlog with all the items that you have to implement. And the Scrum team will take a group of items and put it, and so they will select it during the sprint planning, and so they will put it during this in the sprint to implement it during the sprint. Every day at the same time, they will meet each other in order to discuss the plan and the advancement of the sprint. And in the end, they will review the work done and they will inspect their way of working. And they will, of course, deliver value. So this is how Scrum is doing. So let's see one after one the four um, Scrum events that exist. So sprint planning, daily stand-up, sprint review, and sprint retrospective. So at the beginning of the sprint, you have the sprint retrospective. For a sprint of 1 month duration, this event can can be of 8 hours, which is a lot, but that also means that you don't have other big meetings during the month. So that's why it's 8-hour meetings. If you have a 2 weeks sprint, you can easily spend 4 hours of sprint planning, except if you try to refine your backlog during the sprint, which also can happen because that simplifies the sprint planning. Who attend to this meeting? Well, the Scrum team and also experts if the team needs some experts to help them to understand some points. And what happened during this kind of meeting? Well, the team will plan the work to do during the sprint. And they will try to define a goal, a single goal, in order to know what they have to do and to have a direction they have to follow in case of change of one item, for instance, something like that. So I give you 2 examples of goal. The first one is a real one from one of my teams. It is for the ops team. So hardware requests are done and net flows opened. This is an example. Another example for a dev team, it could be for a team working on delivery apps, for instance. Home delivery is possible for addresses already registered. So you have something, a goal, which is small enough to be achievable during within one sprint. And so in case of change, the team know what they have to follow because the content of the sprint can change, but the sprint goal should stay the same. In fact, this is the only reason why a sprint can be cancelled if the reason is if the sprint goal becomes obsolete. In this case, the product owner, because he's the only one who can say that, the product owner can say that he cancels the sprint. So in the end of this meeting, the team has a plan of the work to do and a goal to reach for the sprint. So every day at the same time, they will retrieve each other to discuss how the work is doing. And this is what we call the daily stand-up, or you can just call it daily. So the daily stand-up is just 15 minutes, no more. Really, it's important because sometimes you can see some teams who say that they have 1 hour of daily every day, and so they are complaining that they have too many meetings. But indeed, if they are not respecting the time of the event, of course, they will spend a lot of time in meetings. Who attends to this daily stand-up? Well, in fact, if you have a look at the Scrum guide, so the guide who is defining what is Scrum, the daily stand-up is by the developer and for the developer, meaning that the Scrum Master and the Product Owner are optional. So this is really, well, you can think that it's really strange because it could be for the whole team, but in fact, the role of a Scrum Master is to make sure that the daily is happening and is well happening. So for a new team, it's really important, of course, to have the Scrum Master present on the daily stand-up. But when you have a mature team, that could be that could be okay if the Scrum Master is not attending to the daily stand-up, because in the daily, the developer are discussing together of how the work is doing and if they are able to follow the plan that they decided during the sprint planning. And the product owner, it's the same. If he is not able to attend the daily, it's okay because he's not the one who is developing and implementing the solution. However, sometimes it's also important for him to attend to the meeting because he can answer directly to some question if the question are short enough. And in this slide, I'll also put another information. You don't need to answer to the 3 questions because maybe if you have some daily, you can have a 3 question. What did you do yesterday to reach the sprint goal? What will you do today to reach the sprint goal? And do you have any impediment that are blocking for the sprint goal? But in fact, if you have a look at the Scrum Guide, there is no information like that in the Scrum Guide. The Scrum Guide is not telling you you have to answer to these 3 questions. No, those questions are just here to help you to have the discussion in the right direction. But in the end, you just need to discuss of how the work is doing and if you are able to follow the plan. Sometimes during a daily, you can have some discussions with just 2 developers, for instance, or you can also have some topics requiring more space and more time. And so in this case, the good practice is to say, stop, let's not discuss it here, but have a meet after. And just the involved person can have a separate discussion. And that will help you to have just a 15 minutes meeting. This kind of meet after, you can also retrieve it in other meeting. If you have to organize a meeting and you define the agenda, but during your meeting you see that 2 persons are starting to discuss about something else, not planned in your agenda, that means that you probably won't have the time to discuss everything. Then you can directly tell them, let's not discuss it here, have a meet after, and continue the discussion linked to the agenda. So this is really a good practices. So every day at the same time, a daily stand-up, and at the end of the sprint, we will have the review. So the review, this time, it's not just for the Scrum team, but it is also for a project manager, just regular manager, business owner, stakeholder, architect, whoever is interested by the content of your sprint. And it could be until 4 hours for a 1 month sprint. So same, it is a long meeting. And the aim is really to inspect all the work done during the sprint. So usually there is a demo. It's really important to organize the demo to show to the stakeholder what has been implemented. And it is also a really good opportunity to get feedbacks from all the stakeholders, the key users, etc. However, it's not just a simple presentation. It's not just a demo. The demo is just one part of the sprint review, because there is also a big part of discussion of about the next implementation and the next item on the backlog. So it is also the place to discuss the items not done and adjust the backlog if necessary, of course. Yeah. So this is also the place to discuss future implementation. Just after the review, you have the sprint retrospective. So this one is only for the Scrum team. You don't have a manager in it. You just have the Scrum team. And this part is to inspect how the sprint was and see if the team can adjust something. So it's not linked to the work performed, but more linked to the way of working, really. So it's a safe place. So it's also the time to discuss all the impediments that you can have, even if it can be a bit difficult. For instance, if you have a huge disagreement with a key user, you can explain it here and discuss it with the team in order to find a solution. So that's why also it's really important to have a good team mindset, because you have to be able to free your mind in this kind of meeting and tell all the things that you want to tell. Um, so for some teams, usually you just have what went well, what went wrong, what we can improve, some things like that. But other teams really prefer to have some games or to have like a thematic during some theme on the retrospective. If it is a team who really enjoy a lot of movies, for instance, you can have a retrospective Lord of Rings, a retrospective, I don't know, on a superhero, for instance, or something like that. Or you can have a game retrospective, like a Dixit retrospective, for instance. Well, there is really a lot. It's a good place for all the people with a good imagination. And it's not just about playing a game, it's also about taking actions. So in a good retrospective, you also take actions and you will review the action on the next retrospective. It's also important to make sure that the team is still improving and fixing some issue. So in the end, all of that are creating what we call Scrum. So it is important to respect all these kinds of events and to have a good Scrum team in order to make it work properly. Now I just wanted to also show you a quick slide about the metrics and how we can measure the progress. Because often the team or the manager wants us to have some KPIs. And the only good metrics for a team is honestly it's the number of users. If you have a product with less and less user, then it means that you have a problem. But if you have a product with more and more users, it means that it's good. However, sometimes we are also asking to see other metrics and measure the progress towards the sprint. So you can have something like that. So it's a real example from one of my previous teams. We call this kind of a diagram a burn down chart. And so the aim is really to see if we are closing the items progressively or if we are doing it at the all time, at the all end of the sprint. So we should be able to follow the gray line that you can see on the picture. And the red line is what we are really doing, how we are doing. So at the beginning, we have all our items at the top because nothing is done. And in the end, we should have 0 because all our items should be done. This is the aim. So you can see that, for instance, for the first day, we were not able to close some items. But in the end, it's perfectly normal because it was the beginning of the sprint. So each developer just took an item, work on it, and it took 3 days to test it and make it happen really properly. And so progressively, we started to close the story. So this is an example. It's also really important to say that the metrics do not replace the importance of the experience, meaning that, for instance, when you see something like that, you can say, oh, but there is a big problem. We are not able to close any topic at the beginning of the sprint. But in the end, if we have a look at the past, we can see that it's always the same and it's perfectly normal at the beginning. So really, metrics do not replace the importance of the empirism and the communication within the team. However, it's still important to see if we are able to, if we have a big impediment, for instance, or not. So that's why I wanted to show you that. So for Kanban, so another method, I don't know if you know the Shadok, it's the picture that I put just here. The Shadok, it's a really old cartoon. I think it was one of my favorite when I was a child because they are always trying to imagine the most complicated solution to a simple problem. And so that's why it was a really funny cartoon. Uh, well, we are lucky because Kanban is really not like that. It is the opposite. It's probably the easiest agile method that exists. And it is really well adapted also to operational teams because the aim is to have the faster treatment of the ongoing demand as we can. So there is 3 principles in Kanban. First, visualize the flow, then manage and improve the flow, and in the end, limit the in-progress flow. So let's try to see that together. Visualize the flow. What does it mean? That means that when you have something to do, well, first is to do, then it's in progress, and then it's done. This is the easiest workflow that we can have. However, maybe that's not represented the reality. Maybe you have something more like that. First to be refined, then it's on to do, then it's on in progress. After that, you know that you will have to wait for the answer of someone. So it's on waiting for someone, and after that, it's done. This is another example of workflow, a bit more precise than the previous one. But the previous one is also working. We are just here trying to really represent the reality. Maybe you can also have something else, like for instance, maybe you can split your in progress in several parts. Like, for instance, when your work is in progress, that means that first you are analyzing the work, then you are implementing the work, after that you are testing the work, after you are writing the documentation, and at the end it will be waiting for and done. So really, in Kanban, we try to have the more precise workflow as possible in order to see where we are doing in our work. Really represents the reality. But if we stop here and we say that Kanban is just that, maybe we will have an issue because maybe we will retrieve ourselves in this kind of situation. We put everything in progress. We are starting a work, then we have something else happening. So, okay, we have to start this work also. And we can have something like this. So my question for you is, do you think that we can improve this situation and how we can improve it? So I let you few times in the chat. If you have some idea on how we can improve it, don't hesitate to put it in the chat. At the same time, I can explain you why this part is an issue. If you have something like that, you will have maybe less motivation because you have so much work to do that is not possible to do it all at the same time. So less motivation. You can also have less quality because you are focusing on too much thing at the same time. This is not possible. So if you have less quality, maybe you have an increasement of the risk also. That's a possibility. And all of that, of course, include also the fact that you may have more lead time, meaning that the work in progress will stay longer in this in progress phase. So I can have a look on the chat. I see that you put several information. So max of 1 user story per dev. Yes, indeed. This is a good start. Limit the in progress work. And actually, this is our last principle, Kanban principle. Blame it on the pending review. There is also some message setting priorities for the US and start the most urgent one. Yeah, so all of that is good. And add some columns bringing details on the treatment of an US. Okay, let's see what Kanban propose. First proposal of Kanban, if my computer is working. Yeah. First proposal, make sure that all the team is calling in progress the same real in progress. If something is in progress, that really means it's in progress. So to do that, we can define in and out criteria. So for instance, to be in progress, it means that the work has been started, and to go out, that means that the tests are done and the mail has been sent to the requester or to the third party. If we want to remove a story from the third party from the waiting for part, it means that we have the answer and the work can be performed again, or we have the answer and the validation is done. So first, really trying to define what we call in progress. This is the first step. The second step is to set some priority, and to do that, we can use what we call swim lane. So for instance, here I took a real example for this workflow. This is a workflow of one of my teams, and the swim lane service desk is also one of the swim lane of my team. So service desk is the part where the user will be able to um, uh, raise the incident, ask for support, etc. So it means that it is much more urgent than a development story. That also means that this is at the top, so all the information present here are most important. And so if we define some, if we're setting some priority like that, we will be able to identify much faster the problem. So here, in this example, we can see where is the impediment. All the team is overloaded by the service desk ticket. And so we can also see that they are not able to work on the development part because there is really too many things to do on this part. So in the end, we are completely stuck and we are like on the left part of this picture on the traffic jam, which is really not the aim of Kanban. Kanban is really to be able to be faster, like on the right part of the tool. And so now we can ask ourselves how to make the ticket moving. There is only one single solution to that. We have to slow down. And this is the proposal of Alexandre in the chat, max of one user story per dev. It's a solution to slow down. We have to limit the number of in progress tickets. So we can put here a number. I don't know if some of you are using Jira or not. In Jira, you are able to put a limit on each column. Well, you will not be able to do that by swim lane, but at least by column. So that also can help you if you are using Kanban. So for instance, here you can say that the max for the in progress is 3. You cannot have more than 3 user stories. And you can put a higher number for the waiting for, because you know that you will need some time before having an answer. So that's okay, you can put 9. All of that, it's answering to a really simple principle, which is stop beginning and start finishing. You have first to finish the work already starting, and then before taking a new job. This is really really the aim before taking a new item. You can also add a minimum limit. And the minimum limit is to help you to irrigate your flow, to be sure that you will always have, for instance, a development story. At least there is one development story every time. So this is the aim, and without this limit, you are not doing Kanban. Because I say that because I can see really often some teams who just stop here. If I go back, they have something like that, and they say, look, we are doing Kanban, but we have an issue because the lead time for our ticket is really, really long. And of course, it is because they are not able to stop beginning and start finishing. So this is why I insist really on that. Kanban is just 3 principles, but you have to respect it because otherwise that won't work. And when I say that it's just 3 principles, it means that in Kanban, you have no defined meeting as in Scrum, where you have sprint planning, daily stand-up, etc. You don't have a defined role, you don't have a product owner, you don't have a Scrum master. You just have to respect the 3 principles, and then it means that you are doing Kanban. However, if you want to have a daily, or if you want to have a product owner in Kanban, yes, you can, of course. It's just that it's optional. If you don't need it, that's okay, and you can live without. So if I want to summarize all that I said during this meetup, Kanban and Scrum will help you to reach the same goal, meaning that you will be an agile team using an agile method. Yes, that will work if you use Scrum or if you use Kanban, or if you use what we call a Scrum ban, meaning that you will mix the two methods. For instance, having a daily stand-up and a retrospective, but all the rest in Kanban. That can work. It's just that in Scrum, it's more rigid because you have really to follow the Scrum event. You have really the role and defined and the Scrum team, etc. And in Kanban, it's more smooth and you can adjust if needed. So Scrum is really adapted when you are doing some dev, and if you have a project that you can just split in small pieces and implement the pieces one by one. And Kanban is really more adapted if you are using, if you are an operational team and if you have incidents to manage, because you won't say to your user, no, I'm not dealing with this incident because we are in the middle of the sprint, so let's wait the next sprint. This is not possible. If it's an incident, you have to fix it now. So that's why Kanban is more adapted, because you won't say, no, I have to wait the next sprint. You will directly be able to pick the item and work on it. Have a good evening and see you next time.